have tremendous power.
At 7:02, we use ours to inform,
connect, and spark real change. But we can't do it alone.
So join the conversation.
Add your voice.
And together, we'll turn words into meaningful action. 7:02.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming countrywide on the Prime Media Plus app, DSTV channel 856
and 92.7 and 106 FM.
7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the second hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for staying with us here on 702. Thank you for your thoughts, your contribution on the 702 open line this morning. We're changing things a little bit on the show today because of the breaking news, the Finance Minister's announcement that he's doing away with VAT without really getting into a lot of details about how this is going to be done. In fact, I think what's now concerning me is that I've been trying to get hold of the chair of the Finance Committee in Parliament to come and tell us what processes would ordinarily unfold, because you don't just decide, oh, VAT is not coming, and then by decree, then that's done. There are other processes that must follow. What does this mean for the fiscal framework that was adopted? Do you go back to Parliament to introduce a bill? And can you do that before the 1st of May? What really happens? What is the process? And it looks like, from what I'm getting, that even the Finance Committee chair doesn't seem to know what processes are going to follow next, which is quite concerning for me, that an announcement like that is made, and yet it's not quite clear what are the processes that are going to unfollow to give effect to this pronouncement by the Finance Minister. So what we're doing ordinarily would be doing the hanging out feature this hour. We're moving that to 11 o'clock so that we keep on chasing this breaking news. I've got Helen Zille now, who's the DA Federal Council chairperson, joining me on the line. And then what I'll do as well throughout this hour, when the ANC and the other smaller parties start their briefing, I'll take some of that live. Helen, let me thank you for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to your listeners.
So let me maybe start with the lawyers that got in touch with you from Treasury as the Democratic Alliance, because there is an impression that's been created here that, the Finance Minister has now somehow listened to some of the proposals from the other parties, and that's why he's now decided to walk back. But his lawyers came to you guys to say, let's work on an out-of-court settlement. Have they indicated why?
That's correct. Well, you only ever offer an out-of-court settlement when you don't think you're going to win in court. And just last week, on Thursday last week, in fact, exactly a week ago today, the Minister sent us his answering affidavit to our court case, in which he absolutely insisted that there was no alternative to the VAT increase, that the VAT increase would go ahead on the 1st of May, and that he was preparing and he's following through with the legislation to make it a reality. That was long after all the smaller parties had been discussing things with him and making alternative suggestions. So what happened between last week, Thursday, and today? One major thing happened, and that was the DA's court challenge, which came to court on Tuesday. That was the 22nd of April. And on Wednesday, we got this offer from the lawyers of the minister. So they gave us a proposal. They said we would like to do an out-of-court settlement. And what we've said to them is, well, we'll consider it, give us a written offer. And now we're waiting for that written offer. And that only really happens if you would rather reach a settlement than be ordered by a court of law to remove the VAT increase.
Okay, so you guys still don't have the full settlement yet from Treasury, yeah?
No, we don't have the full offer, but what they were saying is, please don't go ahead, we want to settle.
Okay. So, what do you understand what process then unfolds now, Helen? I just saw now Parliament has communicated something about, in fact, it's a statement from Cedric Frolick, who's the House chairperson for Committees Oversight and Public Participation, and he's released this on behalf of the Speaker of Parliament. And they're saying that as a consequence of this announcement, the Minister will withdraw the current Division of Revenue Bill and Appropriation Bill in order to propose expenditure amendments. The statement goes further to say it is expected that the Minister will then introduce new bills in the forthcoming weeks. These developments will definitely have obvious consequences for Parliament and the program of the National Assembly. This effect of this will be the review of the parliamentary program as it currently stands when more details are obtained. Is it possible, Helen, that Parliament can have these processes unfold in a space of a week? And what do you understand to be the processes that should unfold to give effect to this pronouncement by the minister?
Okay, so the minister has announced that he intends to issue a new, what is called a rates bill. It's the bill that has a very, very long name, and it's commonly called the rates bill, in which the VAT increase will be made an act of Parliament. He's going to review that and make the VAT rate 15%, not 15.5%. That was the nub of his announcement. Now, in order to do that, he's got to say that he's not going to increase the VAT amount on the 1st of May. Currently, we believe that it's likely, but not definite, that in terms of Section 7.4 of the VAT Act, he can simply revoke the announcement of the VAT increase, which is partly why it is unconstitutional. But we have to hear precisely from our lawyers what this means. What it does say, however, is that he concedes that he can't win this in court. He's going to have to agree with us, and he's going to have to go through a proper process again. It also has profound implications for the Portfolio Committee of Parliament, because there they took a decision that was clearly unlawful and irrational. And in fact, the conclusion that was in the committee's report was not based on any decision that was taken in the committee. And that was the report that went to Parliament that also then took a decision that can't be considered lawful. So Parliament is either going to have to review and rescind its own decision, or it's going to have to be set aside by a court. This is really an unprecedented situation, and we're going to have to see how things unfold, but we're waiting for an offer of settlement from the lawyers of the minister right now, and possibly also from the lawyers for the Speaker of Parliament.
Okay. What does this mean for the GNU, Helen? Because yes, the finance minister approaches you guys to say, because he can see clearly that he's going to lose this case, and if the ruling comes on the 28th, it's going to be a big disaster for him to figure out what to do within that short space of time before the 1st of May. So the ANC is about to hold a media briefing. You guys are not there as members of the GNU. They are going to now speak about their own political process, where they were trying to come up with other alternatives for the finance minister to raise that additional revenue. Where does this leave you and the ANC? Because now you're operating in silos.
Well, it's a very good question, Clement, and we don't have a normal coalition. I mean, first of all, the ANC didn't follow any of the processes set out in the statement of intent when we couldn't agree on the VAT increase. Those processes should have been followed. They were ignored. And the ANC went outside the Government of National Unity to other parties to try and get a majority that would make the DA support unnecessary. They got that majority in dishonest ways. They gave the impression to the smaller parties that they would reconsider the VAT increase, but then they never did. And that was emphasized in the minister's replying affidavit that we just got on Thursday last week, saying the VAT increase must definitely go ahead. So we've got this very low trust environment. The ANC clearly misled the smaller parties into believing that if they supported the fiscal framework in the Portfolio Committee and in Parliament, the minister would reconsider the VAT increase. He clearly had no intention to do so, as his replying affidavit said last week. And here we are, the very major party in the Government of National Unity, having been ignored by the ANC in terms of processes to reach an agreement and having had to go to court to challenge this VAT increase. And now we're excluded from the ANC's press conference, in which they will go with parties that are not in the Government of National Unity. It's crazy. And in fact, in no country in the world would a government, a coalition government, survive this level of mistrust and this level of deception that we've experienced from the ANC. So we're operating in a very low trust environment. But this is an unusual coalition. The DA is there because we're winning the battles that we're taking on, and we intend to continue the battles that we're taking on. First, we try in the political lane, and if the ANC absolutely refuses to follow the processes that we were setting in the statement of intent for resolution of these issues, we'll have to also fight in the legal lane, unfortunately.
I mean, they don't want you to go ahead with that legal lane because they know that they're going to lose. And what's interesting to me now is, how does the ANC then put you on ice and not talk to you when it's their minister who's trying to negotiate with you as the DA for an out-of-court settlement? Because, I mean, the ANC could very well go and claim the victory with the smaller parties, but as the DA, if you don't agree to that out-of-court settlement and you negotiate with Treasury and the finance minister, then the finance minister runs the risk of, losing this, and that's not going to look good on him, even though now he's announced he'll follow other processes.
Well, there are two things here that we have to look at. One is the political side of this, and the other is the legal side of this. On the legal side of this, it is pretty clear that the minister's lawyers are approaching us because they don't want us to be slapped with an adverse court order that might have many rude things to say about them. So they are very wary of that. They want to avoid that, and they're approaching us with a legal settlement. On the other side, the ANC politically wants to claim that it was the discussions with the smaller parties that made it change its mind on VAT. Now, that is patently a misrepresentation because they'd had discussions with the smaller parties for weeks before last Thursday. And last Thursday, the minister said he was sticking by the VAT increase, there was no alternative, and it was going ahead. What happened between last week, Thursday, and today was our court case. And the case that we put before the judges, and the judges saying that they're going to come with an outcome on the 29th of May. And so there's the political desire to make it look as if the smaller parties have reached agreement with the ANC because they don't want to give us any credit for this victory. And then the other side, there is the legal reality of his lawyers saying you better settle on this, otherwise you're not in a good space.
Will you guys, my last question, will you guys, because also these are two separate processes, as you indicate. There's a legal process, there's a political process as well. But are you willing to negotiate that legal process without putting up political conditions? For instance, if the ANC continues to speak to these other parties and speak about what goes on going forward without involving you as the Democratic Alliance, even though legally the finance minister realizes he's losing and wants to talk to you guys. So how do you then find each other with the African National Congress? When are you meeting with them? Weren't you supposed to meet Fikile Mbalula this morning at 11?
Yes, at 12 o'clock last night he cancelled that meeting, which is a typical way the ANC works, I'm afraid. You know, I'm glad they actually formally cancelled it. Otherwise, like I have done before, I would have flown to Johannesburg for nothing. So they did cancel the meeting, but it is quite bizarre that they cancel a meeting with their main coalition partner, whereas they're meeting people from outside the coalition in a joint press conference this morning. I mean, this is crazy stuff, and it shows what a low-trust environment that we're working in and how the ANC doesn't recognize any rules and doesn't stick by any agreement that is made. And that is what's happening now, but we're used to that. We've got used to it in the last year. And the big challenge really is that we work in a high-trust environment in the DA because we have rules, we have procedures, and we stick to them, and we trust each other. We found a completely different way of working with the ANC. They have a very low-trust environment amongst themselves because there are so many factions battling for control. But the result is that you can't ever rely on what they tell you and what they say to you, whether it's having a meeting, whether it's committing to a process, whether it's even signing a statement of intent. You can rely on nothing that they say.
Okay.
And that's the fact. And it wouldn't be the basis for a coalition agreement anywhere in the world, but crazy things happen in South Africa.
Helen Zille, the Federal Council Chairperson, thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, I'm TD Madia. Welcome to my podcast, Politricking. If you're a politically invested individual, Politricking is the podcast for you. Catch exclusive interviews from politicians to local well-known individuals. This podcast will keep you hooked. Find more of these intriguing conversations on primemediaplus.com or on ewn.co.za. And please rate this podcast wherever you listen to help others find Politricking with TD Madia. Politricking with TD Madia.